Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm going to be showing my first build today. So pretty much this is a Transcendence prismatic build. You're just gonna have infinite Transcendence uptime if you use it correctly. So with this build you're gonna want the first Ascent 4-piece armor set. So this is the Pale Heart armor set, which you can just get from doing activities in the Pale Heart. To get tier 5s, I did Overthrow, and after you kill the final boss, it should guarantee a tier 5. Other than that, you'll get tier 3s pretty much. So the 2-piece is Stack 'em Up, where defeating targets with unique elemental damage grants a stacking bonus to Transcendence energy gains while Transcendence is inactive. And then the 4-piece is Burn 'em Down, where while Transcendence is active, using your grenade ability consumes all stacks of Stack 'em Up to grant an escalating amount of grenade energy. So pretty much, when you don't have Transcendence, every different element you use to do damage with, Solar, Arc, Void, gives a stack of this buff. And then when you have Transcendence and you use your grenade, it uses all of your stacks of that buff, however many you got, and gives you a lot more grenade energy, so you have more grenade uptime also. So this is a grenade focused build. It's mainly just ability focused. You can use any exotic. I prefer Relativism, the exotic class item, with Spirit of Inmost Light and Spirit of the Surturachne. So Spirit of the Surturachne means every time you activate your grenade, it gives you Woven Mail, which is really good for damage resistance. And then Spirit of Inmost Light makes it so anytime you use one of your 3 abilities, it gives the other 2 a shorter cooldown. So you just get your abilities faster. So if you just spam all your abilities, it'll make the cooldown a lot shorter, because this does stack also. So starting off, we're going to look at the subclass. We're on Prismatic, of course. For the super, we have Silence and Squall. This is really good for this build. It can do damage. It's really good for ad clear. And it's pretty good at cooldown, helps with the unique elemental damage because it's stasis. And it'll get you some darkness energy from Transcendence if you need it. For abilities, we have Gambler's Dodge. If you want, you can use Marksman's or Acrobat's Dodge, but I think Gambler's Dodge works well because you can get your melee back quicker. For the melee, I have Knife Trick. You can use any melee you want. I think this really helps just to get light Transcendence energy. And then the grenade, I have Grapple. Also with this one, you can use any grenade. This one just has the shortest cooldown. Of course, these are mostly 2 minutes 32 seconds, with this one being 2 minutes and 12 seconds. But other than the cooldown, I just think Grapple helps because it also has a melee. For aspects, I have Threaded Spectre and Gunpowder Gamble. Now I use these two because it gives you 6 fragment slots total. And if you want, you can use Ascension or Winter's Shroud, or even Stylish Executioner if you want to add invisibility to this. But I think 6 fragment slots is better than that, so that's what I'm using. So for fragments, we have Facet of Balance, which will give you melee or grenade energy depending on what element you're doing damage with. Facet of Justice, which makes it so your ability kills explode targets when you're Transcendent. Facet of Generosity, where defeating targets while Transcendent creates orbs, so you'll just always have orbs. Facet of Dawn, where powered melee hits make you radiant. Facet of Protection, where you're more resistant to damage while surrounded, and it's even more when you're Transcendent. And then Facet of Blessing, melee kills will start health regen. Now, you can switch out Facet of Blessing or Facet of Dawn if you want. You could do it for something like Facet of Purpose. That would help if you want some frost armor on top of this stuff. But I just prefer these for the melee. Next for weapons. For this loadout, I have all 3 champion weapons, and with the new update, this won't change, so you don't need to use any certain artifact mods for champions. The main exotic is Microcosm, which is an exotic kinetic power trace rifle. This is pretty much, it says fires a beam of kinetic light dealing massive bonus damage to shields. So this is a kinetic heavy trace rifle that if an enemy has a shield, it'll just like wipe through it instantly. It's also a barrier weapon. And then the intrinsic trait, or just the trait, is that it pretty much gives it Thresh. So every kill gives super energy. And right after you use your super, it gives 20 seconds of bonus damage. Now, they did recently add a catalyst, which is obtainable through, I believe it says, Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit, or exotic payouts. I have yet to get that, so I'm not sure what it does, but if it helps, then try and get it. Now, for the 2 legendary weapons, it doesn't matter too much what you use. I prefer to have Stasis and Solar, just because Transcendence, the grenade, is Stasis and Solar. In the kinetic slot, I use Lost Signal. Now, you could use other weapons. Mint Retrograde is a good one. I think having something as darkness damage in this slot helps. And then I have Abyss Defiant in this slot. You could use something like the new Ringing Nail auto rifle, or the new Rocket Pulse if you want to use a primary weapon in the kinetic slot, like something new, or the new Stasis support frame auto rifle, which you can get from Distortions. These are both very good if you want to use like the Rocket Pulse, or like I have here, a Trace Rifle. I just use this because this is Overload and this is Unstoppable, but you can mix it up if you want, if you don't care about champions, or if you just have other stuff you prefer to use, that'll work. But your main weapon is going to be Microcosm. That helps a lot because the kinetic damage actually gives you light and dark Transcendence energy. So if you go back to your subclass, let's say you don't want like Facet Blessing, you can switch it out for Facet Grace, which makes it so defeating targets with kinetic weapons grants you bonus Transcendence energy, and defeating targets with your super grants you and nearby allies bonus Transcendence energy. So this just makes it so it increases the amount of energy you get from kinetic weapons and your super. That does help a lot. So I think this does work really well on getting Transcendence uptime, especially with the 4-piece armor set from the Pale Heart armor. For the armor, we're going to be focusing. Now, I have either Grenadier or anything with a primary or secondary grenade stat would be useful for this. I have Grenadier for most. Some are different, like Demolitionist or something. But without any grenade mods on my armor, I have 140 grenade stat. So you're going to want at least 100 for this build. And then that's why I have melee mods. So then I have both of my abilities over 100 stat, and my super is also over 100. So 3 of my abilities are over 100 on my stats. So for the helmet, it doesn't really matter what you use for the armor too much, but I have a melee mod, Harmonic Siphon, Kinetic Siphon, and Solar Siphon just for all of your weapons. For the gauntlets, I have another melee mod, Heavy-Handed, Impact Induction, and Momentum Transfer. Like I said earlier, you can switch these out if you want. These aren't like required mods, they just help. Chest armor, another melee mod, a health font, charged up, and then kinetic ammo generation. You could do like solar or stasis ammo generation, or resist, depending on what you want. It doesn't really matter for that one. Leg armor, Another melee mod, Solar Weapon Surge and Kinetic Weapon Surge, just so your primary ammo weapon and your microcosm, they do more damage when you have armor charge. And then I have Innervation. For the class item, I have a melee mod, Time Dilation, Reaper, and Powerful Attraction. Most of this is just for your class abilities, so you can switch them out if you want. It doesn't matter too much. Finally, for the artifact, I use the Hunter's Journal artifact, because as you can see, it works with prismatic, solar, and auto rifles. In the first slot, I have Elemental Siphon. Second slot, I have Sustained Fire. If you switch out Abyss Defiant for something other than an auto rifle, you might want to switch this mod, and one later on, just because it won't buff you if you don't have an auto rifle. Third slot, I have Radiant Orbs, which makes you radiant every time you pick up an orb, which is very useful. Then I have Solar Fulmination, where your ignitions do more damage and they have a larger radius. Then I have Targeting Autoloader, which makes it so getting kills with your auto rifle reloads your weapon and boosts damage. Then I have Transference, which gives you better melee and grenade damage when you're Transcendent, which is very good for this build. And Weapon Kills while Transcendent refund energy after Transcendence ends. This one is very good for this build. That's one of the main reasons I use Hunter's Journal and not another artifact. And then the final one, I have Shield Crush. So when you have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or a Void Overshield, which you will always have one of those, mostly Woven Mail from your grenade, your melee recharges faster and deals increased damage. Then when you're Amplified or Radiant, your grenade recharges faster and deals increased damage. And you'll always be Radiant when you pick up an orb from the artifact perk earlier. Now if you want to take this a step further, you can even switch out, say, like Facet of Dawn for Facet of Purpose. So you get Frost Armor every time you pick up an orb, which will mean every time you pick up an orb, you get Radiant and Frost Armor, which will decrease your melee and grenade regen time and buff their damage. And if you can't pick up an orb, all you have to do is use your grenade and you'll get Woven Mail. So, if you want to switch some of this stuff out, like, it it all depends on what stats you have on your armor. Now, if you need to, go to your Ghost. You can attune, I guess, put a mod on, sort of attune for certain archetypes of armor. So what I did when farming for this armor, I put on Grenadier. Now there's other good ones you can use as well. You can use Siegebreaker if you want health, because health does help a lot. You can do Gunner if you want weapons and grenade. Or you can do Demolitionist if you want class also. I think Grenadier is the way to go, because that got me to 140 grenade, 102 super, and 122 melee. So that's 3 stats above 100. And my health is still 48, which isn't too bad. So, if you're not using an auto rifle, like I said earlier, you don't have to use this artifact. It will help you, but you don't have to. There's plenty of other ones you can use. The Implement of Curiosity, that works with Solar, Stasis, Strand, and Kinetic, which you use all of those in this build, so that would help. And then you can also use Tablet of Ruin, because that uses Strand and Prismatic, and also Trace Rifles. So you can do Queen's Foil Sensor also. Queen's Foil Sensor would work pretty well. It uses Stasis, Solar, and Strand, as well as grenade launchers, if you want to use an area denial like I do. I think area denials work really good for this build. You can also use wave frames or micro missiles, whatever you want. You could even use rocket pulses. I just think area denials are the best for this. This is mainly an ag clear build, but I used it in a GM earlier, and it worked really well. You can take out all the champions, This one's really good for overloads because since it's an area denial, it sticks around, so you shoot it at an overload, and once they're not stunned anymore, it'll stun them again because it stays there since it's an area denial. And then for the auto rifle, it's unstoppable if you have an Abyss Defiant or some high impact frame. If you have something like the ringing nail where it's a precision frame, it'll be a barrier weapon, so just be careful for that. And then there's rapid fire frames like the Reckless Oracle, which are overload. So just watch your champion weapons. It's by archetype now, not weapon, with the new Monument of Triumph update. So it's not like unstoppable auto rifles. It's unstoppable high impact frame auto rifles. And then Microcosm you're going to want to keep on for this build since it's just really good for this build and it does melt shields pretty quickly, even on barrier champions. So that will be a big help to you and it gets you a lot of Transcendence energy. The only thing I might swap Microcosm for is Kvastov, especially if you have the Catalyst. Because if we take a look at Kvastov, I haven't used this in a while, you can see its power 331, but pretty much every 7th bullet ricochets, and it is kinetic like Microcosm, and it's a barrier weapon like Microcosm, and it actually has two traits. One is Shoot to Loot, which is a normal perk. Shooting an orb picks it up, and shooting an ammo brick picks it up and reloads all of your weapons from reserves. And then Eyes Up Guardian, which is a trait for this weapon, where collecting orbs strengthens this weapon's next several ricochet shots, providing more damage and more bounces between targets. So if you collect orbs, it'll buff the right choice, the intrinsic trait, and you can collect orbs with Shoot to Loot. So these work together, and then these work together. So you have 3 perks all working together just by getting orbs, which will also work with this build, because getting orbs can give you Radiant and Frost armor. Now, if you have the Catalyst, I recently got it. I haven't masterworked it yet, but it gives you Attrition orbs, where dealing sustained damage creates an orb of power. That can give you 4 traits that all work together. So you just shoot something for a bit, it creates an orb. You shoot the orb, that gives you this, which buffs this. So pretty much all of these weapons traits work together in some form or another. So I think Kvastov would be a very good substitute for Microcosm, as long as you could get another weapon that's overload in the heavy slot, which there's not many. I think, I don't know if this is just me, I've noticed since the new update there's not too many overload weapons compared to Unstoppable and Barrier. Like say I go to my vault now, I have nearly 700 weapons. If you go to Anti-Champion and then Overload, there's less than 200 out of 700 of my weapons. So if you want, you go to Heavy Weapons here. There's things like swords, those are Overload. If you have a Rapid Fire Frame Grenade Launcher, those count as Overload. Rapid Fire Frame Machine Guns, which I think there's other machine guns that are better than Rapid Fire Frames. But if that's what you like to use, like Shattered Cipher, then you can use it. But really, as you can see, there's not too many heavy overload weapons. There's not even many overload weapons. There's less than a page of kinetic ones that I have, and I have almost 700 weapons in my vault in total. So, if you have spread shot hand cannons, those are good overload weapons. Spread shot hand cannons like Aureus Neutralizer. This is a kinetic one, but there are Void, and there's Arc, and there's Solar. Yeah, like here's an Arc one. Here's a Solar one, which would actually work really well for this build. If you could find an unstoppable heavy weapon, which I'm sure you could easily, put on Kvastov, and then put on this, it wouldn't work super well because it would be double primary. But if you had something other than Kvostov, it would definitely help. Now you could do something like Motif 41, which is a solar area denial. That could work. But as you can see, most of these are primary ammo weapons or just old weapons. Support frames are overload, so the support frame I was talking about earlier, the new stasis one, you could always use that if you want. I haven't tried that too much, but it does seem pretty good. So, those are my recommendations for this build. If you guys want to see more builds in the future, or if you want to see builds on certain things, let me know. I can certainly do that. And I hope you enjoyed, and let me know if you enjoy the build and tried it. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment for more. Thank you and goodbye.